Strange encounters, chilling tales, and moments that defy logic. Let's step into the shadows of this year's most terrifying encounters. I'm a doll collector. I don't seek out haunted dolls, but when you're just grabbing random dolls at thrift stores, it's almost inevitable you'll find some inhabited by spirits. The most interesting story I have is when I found a kinda creepy-looking doll at Goodwill. She had blonde hair, completely white skin, a seemingly homemade all-red dress, and a face painted very distinctively with heart-shaped lips. Obviously, I took her home. A few weeks later, I was out with my sister thrifting in a different city an hour away, and I found a nearly identical doll, right down to the same style of handmade clothes, except this one had brown hair. So obviously I brought her home too. That night, I had a strange dream. A blonde woman and a brunette woman resembling the dolls stood before me and told me, "Bring us all together." I had that dream at least once a week for another 2 years. Finally, one night, I dreamt something different. The dolls themselves, not the women, brought me through a store and led me to a display with a third doll that looked just like the other two but with red hair. They've been quiet ever since. I still wonder what would happen if I ever found that red-haired doll and brought her home too. I was driving with my family somewhere when I looked out my window and saw a familiar but rather uncommon car. It belonged to my friend's mom. I was watching them out my window and saw her mother in the driver's seat and her father riding in the passenger seat. I even made eye contact with my friend, who sat in her usual spot in the back. These people were all exactly as I normally saw them, down to their unique hairstyles and clothes. My friend was wearing the exact same track and field hoodie she wore every day. I immediately texted her and told her about how I had seen her and her family. She asked where, and when I told her, she was confused. They were never at that intersection. In fact, she had been in her house the whole time. To this day, I have absolutely no idea how or why I saw the exact doppelgangers of my friend's family in their car, right as we drove by. One day, I dropped my daughter off at school. Afterward, my preschooler son and I were sitting on the floor in the living room. Suddenly he said, "Poor sister." I asked, "Why poor sister?" He said, "She dropped her donut, and it rolled all the way across the playground." Later that day, we picked my daughter up from school, and I asked her how her day was. She said, "Good, but I dropped my donut, and it rolled all the way across the playground." In my apartment that I've been in since October 2022, I don't know how to get rid of this thing. Everyone has such different advice, and I think, meh, if I ignore it, won't it just go away? Probably the most frightening, at least for me, thing that happened was when I knew it was there, and so was my teen daughter, and she was alone. She is surprisingly not scared of it, or at least she says she is not. Like the other night, we were laying in bed. We share a room right now because I left her father and getting back on my feet. But we both had just gotten into bed, and we heard the sorta like long click you hear when someone turns on the ceiling fan by pulling the chain. If you know that sound, it's very distinct. We are both falling asleep, and I hear that sound from the living room. It was dead silence, so you could clearly hear it. And I said, "Did you just hear that?" And it was like I was gonna start a convo with her again about what should we do to get rid of this thing. So she was annoyed that I didn't just ignore it, I guess. But she said, "Yeah, I don't care. I'm going to sleep now." So the something happened, and I wasn't there. Normally when I leave, I tell her to put on the chain lock. Even if she is asleep, I wake her and make sure she is awake and coming out into the living room before I leave, and I walk out and lock the top lock and hear her put the chain on as I go down the steps of the apartment. One night, she and I had both been up super late, like 5 a.m., and so when I did wake up for an appointment, I did not wake her. I just locked the deadbolt and let her sleep. I left her and felt fine about it. So I'm there at my chiropractor appointment, maybe 15 minutes, and all of a sudden my daughter starts blowing my phone up. So I answer on speaker. "What is it, baby? Is everything okay?" She sounds sleepy and says, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't want to wake you just to lock the door." She said, "Well, that's why I'm calling." "How did you lock the door?" I said, "With the key." She said, "No, I mean, how did you do it?" I said, "With the key, like I always do." "What do you mean?" So we kept going back and forth about how did I lock the door. And she says, "No, Mom. I mean, how did you lock the door like that? You know the lock." And I finally said, "Baby, FaceTime me, so I understand what you're talking about." And she says, "OMG, Mom." Shows me the chain lock locked, and I'm still thinking, she did the chain lock, so what the F is she talking about? I told her I used the key for the deadbolt just like I always do. I said, "Well, I didn't lock that lock. Obviously you did." She says, "No, I didn't. That is why I am calling, because I thought you said only I can lock, and it's locked." I said, "Wait a minute. You're telling me you woke up and came out into the living room and that was locked? That chain was up like that? The chain lock?" She said, "Yeah, that is why I'm asking you, how did you do that?" I panicked because I knew she was there alone, and the chain lock was locked. So if something happened, how could I even just unlock the door to get to her? But I had to stay calm on the outside for her sake, and my mom lives 2 miles away, so I said, "Oh baby, I'm sorry I didn't do that, it's not possible." I said, "Do you want me to call Nana and have her come over?" But my daughter was totally calm, and yawned and said, "No, I'm fine. But when are you coming?" I said, "About another hour." She said, "Okay, call me so I can unlock the door." And that was it. Many years ago, when I was about 12, my family and I were on vacation. On driving days, we normally stopped at a motel for the night by 6 p.m. For some reason, on this night, we didn't stop until almost 8. We couldn't find a motel, so we stopped at an old hotel. The rooms only had one full-sized bed each, so my parents took one room, and my older sister and I took the room next door. After we got settled, I went into our bathroom to take a shower. Standing there was a very old man in a dark suit and white shirt. He didn't say a word, but reached out to touch my shoulder. I screamed and ran out of the room. My sister asked what was wrong, and I told her about the man. She went into the bathroom, but no one was there. No one left either, because we would have seen them walk right past us to exit the room. We ran next door and told our parents, and they summoned the manager. The entire floor was checked, and no one matching that description was found. I still have a 100% clear picture of what the man looked like in my head today. If you're craving more spine-chilling tales, join us for more haunting mysteries and horror stories. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications.